Hello, I'm Lauren, and this is Improving the World. I am an international improviser based in Hong Kong, and I speak with amazing women of improv all over the world. Today, I speak with Twinprov. That's Sarah, Davies, and Julie Flower, and they are based in the Canterbury, Kent area of England. And we talk about balance in improv and what it's like doing a two-person improv, aka a twoprov, as Twinprov. I hope you enjoy. Today I have with me not one, but two fantastic women of improv. They together are Twinprov, but of course individually are separate humans. And who are you, ladies?
I am Julie Flower. In my day job, I work as a leadership and team development consultant and coach. I run my own business and I am an improviser. And what else? A joyful human.
You're very joyful, to be fair.
I am annoyingly cheerful. That's
almost too cheerful. I'm really miserable now. I'm Sarah. I am a drama lecturer and I also work as a producer for an arts organisation and run a theatre company and do lots of improv and also do quite a lot of stuff as a playwright.
So good to have you ladies. Today we're talking about balance because of the fact that you both individually do improv, but you have a two-person improv, let's call it group, which is called Twinprov. If people don't know, when you do a duo, it can be called twoprov, and so you're called Twinprov. Tell me, how did you come to the name of Twinprov? Also, what got you into improv and what keeps you doing it?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we met at an improv retreat that we went on, run by the Maydays, and realised that we lived really near each other, actually, which was brilliant.
It was meant to be.
And just really liked improvising together. And to be honest, the name came from the fact that visually together we look ridiculous because I'm 6'1" and Julie is 5'1".
5'2". Okay.
5'2". She's massive.
Yeah. Actually,
so the idea being that we have a lot of similarities, but obviously that is a really marked difference. And then it kind of grew from there, really, didn't it?
Yeah. And some people do actually think we're twins.
Yeah, they do.
I love
They're like, oh, I saw your sister. It's like, not true.
How would this happen?
Yeah. What is it that pulls you at your core and keeps you engaged in the space of improv?
Gosh, for me, it's just the sheer joy of it. I just find when you're in flow, in the moment with other people, having a fantastic time and being so curious and creative and spontaneous, it's fabulous. And we're very lucky over here to have had some great training from people like the Maydays, the Nursery Theatre, Hoopla, visiting teachers from across the world, festivals. So that keeps me in as well. There's always something new to learn. 5 or 6 years later, I'm like, the appetite is still there.
Really similar for me. I just love learning things. And like Julie said, there's always something new. I also really love the element of risk. My background is much more in playwriting and directing, not necessarily performance so much, although I have done performance. I kind of gave improv a go and thought, I don't think I'll be very good at it, but I'm just going to try, and immediately got so sucked into it because I love that risk taking and the way that it's always developing.
The people who I find usually are the best at improv are the ones who come into it going, I don't know if this is for me. I don't know if I'm going to love this. I don't know if I'm going to be any good. Those are the ones who, maybe because they're not coming with their guard up and they're just like, this is whatever, are fantastic.
Yeah, and also that thing that you can really bring yourself to it. I teach my students are 16 plus and we spend a lot of time going, yeah, it's fine. You can be a bit weird. That's okay. It's that idea of actually bring yourself and bring your quirks. In some ways, it's quite a unique art form for that.
So we're talking about balance in improv. And because you are a duo, you obviously have found that. I find that most relationships that are successful are grounded in a place of balance. What does balance in improv mean to the both of you?
For me, it's something about contrasts and range. I feel in our work that we can span that spectrum between absolutely crazy town, absurd, and also potentially very gamey, right through to something very grounded and naturalistic, and every combination in between. I'm not saying we're brilliant across the spectrum, but actually that sense of being able to work those different muscles and those different tools and seeing what a scene needs right there in that moment or what a character needs, because it kind of reflects the complexity of who we are as humans, and that for me is really just interesting.
There's definitely things that we lean towards your go-tos, if you like. There's a real trust there. We don't like to make things crazy for the sake of it. I don't mean that at all, but even if the world that we create, because we do lots of scene painting, might be quite abstract, and I definitely have a tendency to always want to set everything in a disused building. I'm obsessed with it because I do lots of site-specific theatre. I just love disused places, but I try not to do that. But even if that does happen, we're still looking at relationships and we're still looking at connections. And that's where the balance comes in, because I know that both of us have that always pretty much as an aim, don't we?
Yeah, we do, definitely, that it is somehow grounded in some sense of how people connect with each other. It's exciting because particularly when you're in a duo, just get that kind of to and fro type balance as well. It's a really interesting dynamic. You've only got each other.
And also balance of characters. You often end up multi-rolling and playing each other's characters, and sometimes doing that multiple times. So because we have some similarities, I think, as people, we're very aware of needing to establish two fairly different characters from the start, so that then we have the balance when we're swapping.
I would offer as well that there is an awareness of balance with the audience too, when you are clocked into the balance of the scene, the characters, your other player, that you are probably also really conscious of the space, be it disused or used, and the audience as well, right? And if you are reading and feeling well, then you can clock what's working with them and feel that balance and adjust what you're doing to try to, pull them in further, really, like,
I think the role of the audience is really important in improv, and from a theatrical background, I think it's particularly important. So we do a lot to do with breaking the fourth wall and using the audience and going into the audience, and we have a ridiculous concept show called Bassoonprov, where we have a bassoonist who is normally behind the audience. We do scene painting and he'll join in. So he's an amazing classically trained musician. He'll join in and produce some sound effects to do with the words, but he's also an improviser. So during the whole show, he's coming through the audience slowly. And the conceit is that we're always expecting a bassoonist to arrive for some reason, and then we have to justify it. It's very niche.
Yeah, it's very niche, but we love doing it.
Three loves it though.
And actually there's something therefore about experimentation, what the audience will stand, but also what we can do to mix things up a bit, but still aiming to get some kind of whole. I mean, who else could be underscored by a bassoonist?
Yeah,
it's just great.
And we've also done quite a lot of shows taking improv to places where there hasn't necessarily been improv before, because we don't live in London, we don't live in a big hotspot for improv necessarily. So smaller venues, or we did an International Women's Day thing in a beautiful old Market Square building with pictures of all the Lord Mayors all around it, and referenced all of that during our shows. I think that that's quite interesting, trying to reach different audiences.
Talk to me about scripted work versus improv for you. So from your perspective in terms of, well, it could be anything about how you conceptualize and create the work, or if either one speaks to the other and your work in one space references or improves the other. How do you feel about the differences, and what are your thoughts about scripted v improv?
Coming from a writing background, when I got into improv over the last couple of years, I didn't do loads of playwriting anymore, because improv is so immediate. So then when you go to sit down and actually write a script, you're like, oh my goodness, this is hard work, comparatively. But recently I've been looking at how you can marry the two things. You won't be surprised to know this is in a disused building, but I did a site-specific show in an old attic in a beautiful traditional building near where I live, over several rooms. And it was a play that I'd written about somebody clearing out their mother's belongings. It definitely had improvised elements to it, because it was promenade and the audience were following the action round, and then you had these, they weren't ghosts, but they were characters attached to the house who would interact with the audience and pass them letters through holes in the walls. And every single show was different in that respect, dependent on where the audience stand and how they interact with the piece. And I'm developing something similar now, kind of a theatre trail with loads of different mini plays, which Julie has been involved in as well. For me, I think at the moment it's about the audience interaction elements, but obviously scripted work is very specific, and improv in some ways is the opposite, which is great. So I think it's an ongoing process for me, looking at how you marry the two.
Has your scripted work changed for the fact that you've started improvising in the last few years?
Yeah, I would say 100% actually, because when I teach playwriting, we talk a lot about how dialogue isn't necessarily as realistic as it is in real life with all the interruptions. So if you go and do that exercise where you spy on people and write down dialogue, how people actually talk, it's very different, isn't it, to what you'll actually have in a script. The flow of the dialogue that I write is different. Also, in all honesty, my favourite thing in the world is improvising objects. So I've just written a whole play about stationary objects, people being stationary objects.
You need stationary, like rulers and pencils.
Yeah, of course.
I played a set square in the rehearsed reading.
She did. She was such a good set square.
Thanks.
And Julie, do you have a performance background, a theatre background?
Not a professional theatre background, although I've had a reasonable amount of training, but I've done scripted work on stage for, probably about 15 years. And I suppose my reflection as just a sort of jobbing stage person, I'm not a writer, is just how, since I've been improvising, I found it's added depth to my characters in scripted work. It's just enabled me to explore those much more, get much more of a range in terms of emotion and connection, both improvising in the workshopping of the play more, but actually just for myself, feeling I have more tools to do that.
Also, I think it gives us performers and actors particularly, it gives another string to your bow and real level of confidence, because the course I teach is an acting course and we're trying to prepare people for drama school and auditioning. Doing 2 years of that training alongside all of the improv that I obviously introduced to the course because I'm obsessed with it means that when people go for audition, they're already quite confident in being able to do things on the spot, which not everybody is. Like, it's quite a scary thing, isn't it? So improv is all about that.
For me, part of the quality that improv has lent to me as someone going through this life is probably, to your point, greater than what it maybe has lent to me in an acting space. It has improved me and shifted me as a person, which therefore has changed my acting. But it's more of an indirect route. Many people come to improv so that they have, as you say, another string to their bow, so that their acting has maybe more character depth or physicality or something like that. And for me, it has more shifted how I talk, how I listen, how I engage with people, how I own my space. And that informs whatever else I do. And like you said, how you audition, how you, whatever.
For me personally, it gives you a real sense of freedom. The first degree I did was in drama, but I always felt like I'm super, super tall. I'm never going to be Juliet. That kind of thing of the physical space that you take up on stage and what you would be cast as actually in the industry. I felt that that was quite limiting, whereas with improv, you can be anything. You can be any gender, you can be an object. The fact that you might look more unique is a good thing, and there's such a freedom with that.
Good point, because I'm a very small human and my size has come up in life anyway. I love when someone looks at me and goes, "God damn, you're small." And I'm like, I mean, I was here the whole time. You just thought
I know, people just say it, don't they? In
an improv space, we're always taught to not comment on the person. So if someone's wearing glasses, we don't talk about their glasses. If they're wearing an orange top, we don't talk about their orange top, right? We're speaking to the character that you're playing. So there is, as you said, this freedom of getting to unzip you, throw that to the side and be whatever you want. And yet I still find sometimes that people will say things and make me be a small character or a small something. They'll look at me, and I don't know if it's a forgetting, but they'll look to that. Part of this journey is about owning what you can say, and without straight negating, pushing forward with your intentions and helping to drive in a way where you own comfort.
And that awareness, when I started improv, I'd often be endowed by other people as quite high status characters because I'm looming over them. Sometimes I purposely will play the opposite. I don't mean I'm going to block people, but if it's my choice, I will do those kind of things. There was a scene where I was in a car and I didn't even think about it. I just asked if I could move the chair backwards because that's what I always have to do. And the audience responded to that because I think it was really real. But yeah, like I said, I think there's a freedom there.
Tell me a little bit more about your approaches to improv, ladies. So I know that you both come at it from a little bit of a different perspective, and maybe you lean into different ways, absurd or naturalistic. What does that look like, and what does that mean for you? And is it mostly about disused buildings? I want to know this. Sorry for the continuity lapse. The video died and we all came back in and we're in different orders now. By the way, I've never started with a disused building.
You should. Yeah, great.
The way forward. We both have that interest because one of my interests is architectural history. So I just love that idea of exploring unusual spaces. For me, I really love emotional connection. I really love relationship. But then I also love the playful side of things. And I don't actually stray away from more serious themes, pathos, but obviously you have to be careful. It's about balance, right? I quite like to go in and organically grow a character and see where it leads. There's something joyful particularly about the duo format, and we do a mono scene, so typically the set will be 15 minutes, potentially 30 minutes long, so you have time to explore the characters and grow them in different ways. That's really something that's interesting to me.
Yeah, similar, I think, in lots of ways. I'm quite interested in magical realism and the more fantastical side of things, and a lot of my stuff is black comedy in that respect. I just have a natural want to go down that route. I will tend to bring in some of the more abstract things. Sometimes we did a nice thing where we were paintings, didn't we, in a haunted place. We were haunted painting. Because it's a mono scene, we often have a thing where we will establish the characters and the relationships for quite a while, and then a third person will come into the scene for whatever reason, obviously also played by us, and that's where we tend to bring in that kind of element. Or I like the really gamey stuff as well. Once you've got relationships and connections established, you can bring that in.
Are you saying that you both start with a gentle, natural character approach when you begin the work, and then you layer on top of it little tidbits of the absurd and the weird? Or you start with scene painting, giving it foundation of weirdness, and then you start with character as well? So you're starting with both, and then they bridge up and build together?
I think it can be a little bit of either or. The scene painting might be somewhere very realistic, depends on what the stimuli is and all those kind of things. I think something Julie's really good at, which I try to copy, is object work and using the space. So we've worked quite a lot on establishing the space, having one character in there using everything in the space before the other character even enters, which is something really nice and is forcing me to use physicality more. And like Julie said, it is relatively organic, I think.
Definitely. Even when we're painting the scene, we don't have a strong premise in our minds. We are just literally thinking, okay, we're being inspired by each other. Let's see what happens here. And sometimes, even if the space is quite fantastical, the relationship in the scenario might be relatively normal, whatever normal is.
For me, it's actually very much like writing. I'm not really a plotty writer. Like when I'm writing a script, I don't have an end necessarily. I don't really work like that. So, you know, you're establishing something with loads of description, like you would actually if you're writing a novel. It's just kind of growing from there.
I guess we sort of touched on this a little bit with the writing, whether it's with kids or coaching that you do. How does your improv inform the other things that you're doing?
So for me, there's a very direct influence in the sense that now I incorporate quite a lot of improv techniques, I suppose applied improv, into specific development work that I do with teams and with individuals. And that's very different to how I worked, say, 5 years ago when I was very analytical, much more consultancy tools, more directive. Now I work in a much more emergent way. And I think back to what you said, Lauren, around how improv has changed you as a person in terms of your presence, the way you collect and listen. I find that those skills have been absolutely transformational in terms of the work that I do with people. It's like a stick of rock, it's going through me. So it's about how I am, and therefore the kind of work that I can do with people in a confident and safe way that I just wouldn't have been able to 4 or 5 years ago.
For me, the link is very direct in that it's to do with my job as a drama lecturer. But actually, I think I do teach in different ways. I've been teaching for 15 years, and as a teacher I always like learning new things. I don't do the same lesson year after year, all that kind of thing anyway. But since I've been doing improv, I love the fact that you can come and bring new exercises, new techniques all the time, because if you're doing 8 hours of warm-up, you know, at the top of every session, you need new material. Improv makes you not scared at all to look silly. I've never really had a problem with that anyway. But really, really joining in with things. I think in teaching it's really important not to make it about yourself. It's always about the students and facilitating them. I will be the first person volunteering or demonstrating something if that's relevant. Improv as its own art form is quite different. Doing a tiny bit of improv training for actors, a bit of magic if stuff off text if you're directing a play, they're two quite different things. So actually to bring in all of those learnings and constantly be evolving, I think has been really useful for me and for the students. And I also do teach improv at an improv school in Kent, which I co-run with somebody. So obviously massively useful for that as well.
The concept of yes and, right, which is one of the foundations we all start with in improv. You start literally saying yes and. So every scene is statement, yes and more, yes and more, yes and more. And then when you get that, you lose the literal yes anding, you take on the concept of it, but you ditch the word. So it's about teaching you a methodology. It, for me, is something that has wormed its way in. So I will literally use yes and sometimes in business meetings, or I will write emails and then stop, look at them and go, okay, let me go back, put in some conceptual and intentional yes and language to, you know, get what it is that I need and meet all the brief and la, 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 right? So from a very foundational kind of way, and that touches on all aspects of interactions, but relationships that I have personally as well as professionally. I feel that improv has informed that. Do you find as well that it has like creeped its way into the cracks of your life and your relationships and things?
Yeah, without doubt. I mean, I think it's made me an I won't say nicer person, but I think a more playful person, and therefore more fun to be around. Because I'm actually quite an academic person, and although I think I'm quite cheerful, yeah, hell yeah, cheerful, but felt the constraints of the norms of how you should behave or how you should think or getting things right. Whereas actually improv has just made me sort of loosen up and be freer as a human being, but also enabled that stronger connection and encouraging relationships. And the lovely thing about a yes and style of approach is it's a sort of positive psychology type of approach, isn't it? It's really giving that encouragement and creating a climate where hopefully everybody can be their best and come up with new ideas. Sometimes my husband will be like, are you trying to coach me? Are you doing improv on me? Because obviously they're very complimentary. And it's like, hang on a minute, I know what you're up to. Particularly when you consciously decide to make those connections and employ something like yes and, you do see people react to you in very different ways. That's quite an addictive superpower, really.
Yeah, I'd completely agree. I think that kind of the confidence to follow an impulse and respond to something with real enthusiasm, that whole thing of when you're doing long form and you're standing on the back line and that follow your feet before your brain gets a chance to tell you that you suck, that is such an important ethos to bring into things. That is the concept of yes anding, that idea of making everybody else look good, treating people like geniuses, all those kinds of things. In my teaching, it will manifest in that if there's creative ideas, I can really enthusiastically say how amazing they are and what we could do with them. Still being evaluative, I don't mean everything's amazing, but that level of not being afraid to show real enthusiasm and passion and joy for creative things, I think is missing in lots of spaces, and I think that it's great that we have that.
Ladies, if you could share words of wisdom, if you could speak to your improv peers, people who've never tried improv before and find this video and are curious and we've decided to get them into the cult, obviously, or the younger version of you, what would your words of wisdom be?
As simple as it sounds, don't be afraid to just try it. I think if there's a tiny spark within you going, I'm a little bit curious about that, I think that there's a joy there to find that you don't really realise is there until you've tried it. And I know I sound like a cult leader right now, but I think try it once, you will love it. And
yes,
also,
Sarah.
yes, you must do it. You can really be yourself. You will be able to embrace that through improv. Just give it a go. That's my advice.
My advice was going to be let it go. And I'm not talking about the song from Frozen. Just let it go. Let your inhibitions go. Let your worries about taking risks go. Let your playful mind just go wherever it needs to go. And I think that would have been great advice to give to my younger self, that freeing concept for people, particularly if they're coming into this from normal life, from different careers with certain constraints. Just, you know, let all that go, because those rules don't apply here. How cool is that?
And also it's a safe space to do that. That's what I always say to people who want to come and try our improv drop-ins. You're not going to be humiliated. You participate as much as you feel comfortable. You push yourself. That's really important to know, because a lot of the fear comes from the fact that you're going to be pushed to do something too early, and it's really terrifying. And actually I want people to come out feeling that excitement that they've tried something new.
Ladies, how can people find you if they want to watch Twinprov, come to drop-ins, or if they want to just come hang out and sip tea with you in the countryside, which I assume is what you do.
We do all the time.
Or just throw cash at you. Where can they find you?
We're at Twinprov Improv on Facebook.
Lovely. All right. Well, thank you so very much for spending some time with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
This is Improving the World, and there's more where that came from. Thanks very much. Bye, all. So, did you love the video and my wacky virtual backgrounds? If you did, please say kind, wonderful things in the comments down below. And you can subscribe if you're feeling saucy. And look for more Improving the World. Thanks.